All right, so we are now moving from India to China. So we've traveled a lot in our search for happiness. So we were in the Middle East, we were in India, and now we enter the Kingdom of China. And the main person we're going to study here is Lao Tse. So you can spell it L-A-O. I mean, it has different spellings, but and then T-Z-E, Lao Tse. So I'm going to talk about him mostly because he's the author of our book, right? So this is around 4th century BC. It's around the time of the Upanishads, right? I think we also saw the date was similar. Lao Tse actually is not a proper name, just means old master or old man. So there's a few legends about him, how he was born, that I can share with you. One first legend says that when he was conceived just when his mother was looking at a shooting star. So I don't know where they made love, right? But it must have been out in the open. She was looking at a shooting star and he got conceived, right? Another legend, I mean, of course, there's meaning, right? What could be the meaning of being born under or conceived under a shooting star? Like, what do you think would be the meaning of that? What does it tell you about Lao Tse? That he was conceived under a shooting star. Actually, we'd need to know like the meaning of shooting stars in China, which I don't. So maybe someone can research that for us. Another theory was that he was born old. In other words, he stayed 62 years in the womb and he was born already old, meaning the meaning of that I know is basically he was born wise, right? Didn't need to grow. He was just born that way. Anyways, he was kind of a humble background. He lived as an archivist in the royal courts. He was kind of like a librarian, right? He had no school, I mean, he had a few informal disciples, but he didn't have like a school or a school of thought. I mean, his main, his opponent, right, a philosophical opponent, Confucius, had a school and was very well known, right? So Lao Tse is kind of responding to Confucius. And so we need to talk briefly about Confucius, so you can start to see the difference between Lao Tse and Confucius. Confucius had the idea that society needs to be in harmony, and for that there needs to be certain rules, right? And these rules, by the way, you can still see them applied in Japan and Korea and in China. There's still a very strong influence of Confucius. These are the rules called rules of social stability, moral uprightness, and there's 5 kinds of rules, right? There's the rules that are for the king, rules for the father, what are his duties, right, towards his family, towards his children, the rules for the son, what are his duties towards the father, towards the rest of his siblings. There's a set of rules for the wife, right, what are her duties, what is her place, and finally, the elder brother, rules for the elder brother, and the rules for the younger brother, right? Probably, right? The younger brother needs to submit and be respectful. The older brother, right, needs to maybe be kind and so forth. So everyone has this set of rules. Everyone has this function. Everyone has this role, which explains why still, I mean, actually, China with communism, they completely got rid of all of these hierarchies, right? So in China, actually, is one of the most egalitarian societies in Asia. But we still see very much, I think when you go to South Korea or Japan, there's still a very strong hierarchy of because you are here, therefore, right, this is how you should act. Actually, when I went to South Korea, it was very strange for me because the first thing they would ask me is, how old are you? And I was like, what the hell? Like, how is this any of your business, right? And so then someone explained to me, no, they need to know your age so they know how to act towards you. They need to know if you're in that range so that they know what are the ways they are going, right? So that they know exactly, so that they don't treat you in a way that is inferior to your status, right? I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? So, but at first it was super, I was like, what? Because, especially in Europe and in the States, like this is the most rude question you can ask somebody, right? So that's the idea, right? Everyone is in their position, and there's a set of rules for each one of these positions. So kind of similar to the caste system in India, where everyone has their position, their function, and you cannot get out, right? If you're a woman, if you're the younger son, you're stuck there. This is the rules for you. That's how you should act, end of story, right? So there were a lot of rules about how to keep society in harmony, and Lao Tse was very critical of that. For Lao Tse, his idea was that everything has become too rigid, everything has become too legalistic, and we have lost our natural attunement, and this is the key, to nature, right? He's saying as soon as society begins to build itself up and create these artificial hierarchies, these artificial gender or age roles, right? And everything becomes very artificial and kind of scripted, right? He's saying we are losing completely the natural way to relate, the natural way to live, which is the way that is not in tune with nature, right? So now it's actually very much we're going to see is proposing completely new morality, completely new ethics than even the one we're used to. We're very Confucian in the West. We have rules, traffic rules, we have all kinds of rules, right? And laws, right? We're very legalistic system. And Lao Tzu would be horrified, right? He'd be like, you have so many rules and laws, like how do you even like breathe, right? And he would say, if you were just to go back to the natural state of your being and be again in tune with nature, you would spontaneously do the right thing. You wouldn't need this script to be written out for you. So we'll find more about that. Anyway, so after a while of living in the Confucian atmosphere, right, Lao Tzu got tired, he was old, and he left. We know he left on an ox, which is, by the way, a sign of enlightenment in some Buddhist cultures. Anyways, he left on an ox, and he wanted to kind of pass off as a peasant. So he got to the border of China, and he was trying to like dissimulate who he was, and the guard recognized him, right? And he told them, okay, you can leave China, but before you leave, you need to write down some of your teachings, and hence, this is a legend, of course, the Tao Te Ching that we're going to read, right? This was scribbled down in about a night, right? Few hours in the night, he scribbled down the Tao Te Ching for us, and then he disappeared, vanished, right, at the border of China. So that's the kind of the legends or the kind of biographical elements we have been able to glean about Lao Tzu. Okay, so let's talk about the Tao Te Ching. Main things, what I just said, right? Tao Te Ching was written as a backlash against the Confucian thought. By the way, Confucius, you spell Confucious. Right. So the idea in the Tao Te Ching is really, of course, it's written. It still seems very like almost like a script, but the writing in the Tao Te Ching is really there to help us make the journey back to nature. It's not there to teach us anything. It's there to align us. So whatever we're learning in the Tao Te Ching is how to align. It's not what to do or how to or what to think. It's how do you align so that then you're completely aligned with nature, and then naturally you will know what to do. So the Tao Te Ching doesn't have any positive teachings in the sense of Tao Te Ching doesn't tell you what is right, doesn't tell you what is wrong. Tao Te Ching is only about alignment, right? How do we align? What position to take in the way we live, in the way we think, in order to be aligned. And once we are aligned, the right action will emerge by itself, according to Lao Tzu. There's a great quote here, which we'll read probably. When the great Tao is forgotten, goodness and piety appear. So in other words, he's saying when we've forgotten the connection to the Tao, by the way, let's define that briefly. Tao, T-A-O, from the Tao Te Ching, right? Tao is simply the intelligence of nature, or nature. You can just translate as nature if you want, right? Intelligence of nature or nature. So this is what we want to align ourselves with, right? In order to have the ultimate happiness and ultimate right behavior, ultimate right action. So when the Tao is forgotten, he says, right? This is in the Tao Te Ching. Goodness and piety appear. So let's stop on that a little bit. What does he mean that when the Tao is forgotten, this is when goodness and piety appear? What is he saying? What does he mean by goodness and piety? That they come only when we've forgotten the Tao. That seems strange. What does he mean by that? Let me hear you a little bit on this. Let's start thinking about Tao Te Ching. I can wait all day. I have time. I have the whole afternoon. So let me repeat the question. What does it mean when we've forgotten the Tao that now we need goodness and we need piety Show us the way. What does he mean by goodness? What does he mean by piety? What's going on? Mm-hmm.
I think maybe when he means Tao, since it means nature, he may have said that once we lose that sense, we have to go back and rely on the rules, like what Confucius has said.
Exactly. Right? Very good. Right? As soon as we lose that natural contact with nature, now we need right and wrong. Now we need what to distinguish between good and evil. Now we need the scripture. We need the, the authorities to tell us this is good, this is, evil. Now we need piety, religion, right, to show us the way. But ultimately, originally, we didn't need any of that. We didn't need any of those rules. We didn't need religion, scripture, and the whole legal system. If we were attuned to nature, we are naturally good, right? According to Lao Tzu. It's very interesting. So he's a kind of, if you study a little bit Western thought and you studied someone like Hobbes, who talks about the original state of nature, right? Hobbes in the Leviathan says, well, if we had no rules, it would be chaos. Everybody would kill everybody, right? Lao Tzu would beg to differ, right? He would say, no, actually, if we had no rules, we would naturally go back to our original natures and spontaneously do the right thing. We are not savages, right? When we are in the natural state. On the contrary, that is when we are at our highest refinement, right? So, okay, so we have that. So once we know that there is this intelligence in nature, or we speculate that it's there, right? We can't demonstrate any of this. How the big question here in the Tao Te Ching is, how do we attune to this principle, right? And again, a lot of what we're talking about in this class, right? I mean, it's a philosophy class, and you're not getting a lot of arguments, right? This is the approach is different from Western philosophy. Western philosophy, we would first prove that the Tao exists, right? This is what people like Spinoza and whoever is starting to talk about, God and the ultimate, they will prove to you first. So these Chinese people, they're not even bothering to prove this. The Tao exists. This is all, end of story. Why? Because the way they prove is through experience. This is a very different way of attaining the truth, right? In our culture, truth is found in a logical argument that makes sense to our brains. In the Chinese culture, you know the Tao exists because you have connected to it through various exercises and you have felt the difference, right? So a lot of these things that we saw in the Upanishads, here in the Tao Te Ching, you can only know if you actually do the work of attunement, right? Do the work of alignment, and then see if you feel any different, right? I think I mentioned before that when I started to get into this, actually was doing it out of compassion for a friend of mine who was begging me to, so I could, understand him, right? So I was like, fine, fine. So I did something we'll do next time, which is the orbit. It's a kind of meditation. And I was like, this is not going anywhere. I did it once a week for about 2 months. And then I started to feel it, right? What he was talking about, right? So a lot of what is being spoken here in these texts, right? You cannot know it until you experience it. So you cannot know the attunement with the Tao until you have actually felt the shift of energy in your body or the purification of your energy, and you emerge, right, from a session maybe of Qigong or meditation different. Now you're like, whoa, 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 something happened. What happened, right? You've connected to the Tao, right? That's the idea. So a lot of these texts, right, which are very ancient, which have a different, their approach to truth is different. They're not going to go into big arguments like the Western texts would. They're going to show you the way, and you are now going to see if you experience it or not. You decide, you prove it through your bodily experience, right? So anyways, so this is the big question. How do we attune to the Tao? Now we're going to see 3 ways to do this in the Tao Te Ching, and I'm going to tell you now. And then we're going to see how Qigong can actually already help us begin to internalize these 3 ways. So I'm going to list them, and then we'll go into detail. Number 1, I have called it, let me not call it anything. Number 1, embracing all opposites. That's number 1 way you attune yourself to the Tao, by learning to embrace all opposites. We're going to talk about that. Number 2, action without action. This is a key concept in the Tao Te Ching. It sounds like a paradox, and it is, and we're going to see what it means. The action without action, or doing without doing, right? This is a key concept. The Chinese, I'm sure you've heard the Chinese word for it is Wu Wei, right? Anybody heard this concept before of Wu Wei? W-U, and WEI. This is action without action. It's found only in the Tao Te Ching, this kind of. I have not seen this philosophical concept elsewhere, right? The Wu Wei. Very beautiful. So that's the second one. And number three, of course, silence, right? Again, the Eastern traditions, so interesting because in the West, wisdom is found by talking, right? If you read Plato, everybody's talking, right, to each other. And they're in big conversation and they're trying to, right, trying to kind of reach the truth through words, right? In the Eastern traditions, we saw Upanishads, and now silence is the path to wisdom, right? I think in the chat they want point 1 and 2. So, okay. Point 1, embracing all opposites. Point 2, action without action. And then point 3, silence, which we're going to also practice here. So it's a totally different approach to wisdom. We are not, silence is a way to go beyond the brain, beyond the mind, in order to achieve what Plato talked about even, right? When Plato talks about discursive knowledge, and then he has a higher knowledge called intuitive knowledge, he's talking about this. Discursive knowledge is philosophy. We talk together, right? We're trying to figure out what is the right way to do this. We decide together. Highest knowledge, intuition, which is to be in the presence of the good. For Plato, right? You are actually right there in the presence of the good. It's shining on you, right? So Plato actually very Eastern, right? Influenced by Eastern tradition, right? So even Plato was aware that there is a path beyond the mind, and that is the highest path to connect to what Plato calls the good, or here is called the Tao, in Upanishads they call it Atman or Brahman, right? So even Plato understood once you have silenced the mind, this is when you begin to reach this higher wisdom, right? Okay, so let's go into each one of those. Yeah, I have 20 minutes, 25. We're good. The embracing of opposites, point 1. Okay, two very important concepts in Chinese philosophy and medicine, by the way. Yin and Yang, which you've certainly heard of, right? Y-I-N, Y-A-N-G. So Yin and Yang found everywhere, in the cosmos, in the human body, right? So let me describe a little bit what they are. Yin and Yang are simply the two main energies of life. As long as these energies are in balance, you have health, harmony, peace, right? Cosmic, political, physical, health, harmony, peace. When these two energies are in balance, I'm going to go into more details, right? So let me say that again, right? If you want to achieve political peace, right? Peace in your environment, in your society, or peace in your body, right? You have to learn to balance the yin and the yang energies. So let's start with defining what each one is, right? And I'll give examples. Yin energies is any type of energy which is internal, right? Internal, hidden, dark, cold, receptive energy. Okay, this is associated with the female, right? For a number of reasons. So let me say it again. The yin energy is connected to the earth, first of all, to the feminine, to darkness, to cold, and to receptivity. That's the first main energy that you see in nature. It's interesting that they see it as an energy. So for example, winter is very yin, too yin, right? There's an imbalance. It's cold, it's dark, right? It's internal, let's add that, right? I think when I say receptive, I mean that, but let's add the element of internal, right? In the winter, you don't want to go out and play sports, right? You want to watch TV, be home, eat snacks, right? It's internal energy. So yang is the opposite. Yang is connected to the sky, to the masculine, to light, to heat, to activity, and to the external, right? And this, of course, is very important also, right? So I'll give you an example in nature how these two energies have to stay in balance if there's to be any life on Earth, right? Imagine a world only yang energy, light, heat, activity. What's missing? Let's look just agriculture. Food security. You planted your field. Now you have plenty of sunlight. That's good. It's daytime all the time. You're working on your field. What else do you need for the field to grow? Of course, you need those things, but what else do you need?
Rain.
Yeah, exactly. Water. Also the seed. Remember, if you've done this, planted seeds, you know that you never plant a seed outside. You first plant it in darkness. Only in darkness the seed begins to grow. And then it needs light, right? So just looking at nature, we see that these two energies need to work together. If you have too much yang, the crops will die in a drought, right? If you have too much yin, they will die in a flood, right? These energies have to be balanced in nature, right? Let's look at society. This is our problem today. The philosopher Irigaray has actually made this observation. I'm just repeating her. Our societies become, according to her, too yang. What does she mean by that? Imbalance. Too much yang, not enough yin. What does she mean? How is our society too yang? Tell me. I'm intrigued. Y'all, don't make me sit here waiting for you. I'm gonna start banning computers if this continues. I will. If y'all don't participate better, I'm gonna start banning computers so you're not hiding behind your computer, thinking of other things. Thank you. Go ahead.
I guess you could say that, like, in our modern society, we always chase that, like, external factor that's, I guess, the motivation behind why we do what we do. And we're constantly, like, in that state of activity where we're constantly chasing that, but we're never focusing on the internal happiness.
Excellent. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right, obviously, right? First way to think about it. There's several ways. First way to think about it. Externals are what matters in our society. We always chasing external happiness, external wealth, external status, external, right? And honors, power. And we're missing in our civilization deeply work on the internal. We are not, I mean, just look at yourself. You're home by yourself. Can you stand 5 minutes of sitting by yourself at home without doing something? No. Right? We're always trying to do something. We cannot sit with ourselves. Why? Because we have a complete depletion of yin energy. We are not capable of being internal anymore. This is one of the big sources of unhappiness in our world, right? This imbalance. Remember, for the Tao Te Ching, happiness is finding the balance. Wholeness, health, and happiness are the same, right? What's another way we're too yang? There's several ways we can think about this. You can even think in terms of masculine, feminine imbalance. What's another way that we are maybe too yang or too masculine as a society? Doesn't mean it's bad to be masculine, but too much is an issue. How are we too? Yes, go ahead.
Maybe we, as a society, usually we reward competitiveness and putting other people down.
Excellent, right? Competitiveness, we have to be, and of course there's room for this. This is good to have a little bit of yang. If we're all sitting here loving each other, you know, and singing kumbaya, not going to go very far. We need a little bit of competitiveness and fire, right? But if you have only that and no, right, none of the yin factors of nurture and care, or, you know, whatever, what's the word, solidarity, right? We're imbalanced, right? We are missing again deeply the yin in our society, which is why our society is deeply unhappy, according to Lao Tzu. Any other way to see this? Active, receptive, dark, light, cold, hot, feminine, masculine, earth, sky. Any other way you want to identify the imbalance in our society?
So just a thought. I don't think it's what I'm gonna say is not a clarification of the imbalance, but to go on the yang. So I just, like, a thought that just occurred to me is that one of my favorite books in, like, I've ever read was Lord of the Rings, and one of my favorite characters was Aragon. And as grown up, I've always wanted to be like Aragon and everything, but I didn't understand the fundamentals of what made him a great character until I watched a video of when a person said that the reason Aragon is so great is because he's something, an archetype of the gentle warrior, in which he's masculine in certain situations in which he needs to, like, protect the people of Rohan, but at the same time he's gentle with the hobbits, and I believe one of the characters, a female character, that wants to like have an attraction to him, but he's gentle in a way of letting her down because he knows that his heart is with another woman. And he's not hyper aggressive and masculine. He doesn't kill for revenge, but he sheds blood when he needs to as the way of defending. So in that sense, I could see maybe he's like the balance of the yin and the yang. In a way, he's not too much yang of where it's toxic masculinity. He's just like a rampaging psychopath, but he's in that sense of where he's strong. It brings back the quote when he's like, be a warrior in a garden, but not a gardener in a warfare. And that's when I really related to it. And I was like, whoa, that was like that big like realization, because I was like, wow, like there's so many I know I'm ranting right now, but there's so many like spheres of books that show like toxic masculinity, and it's like you don't want to go to that point. You want to be like arrogant. Anyway, that's my thought when you said the balance.
Excellent, very good. Absolutely, right? We have this notion of the balance between the yin and the yang, even as a human being, right? You're not too aggressive, you're in touch with your feminine side, you're able to be a gentle warrior, right? Excellent. So this is the idea, right? We see this in nature, in society, and now we can see it also in the health of the body. This is one of the main interesting elements, facets of Chinese medicine, right? Is to diagnose everything that we're going through in terms of an imbalance of yin and yang. I'll give you an example. If you catch a cold and you're sniffling, what's the imbalance? Too much yin or too much yang? You have a cold. Yes, too much yin, right? What do you usually do in order to get rid of your cold? You'll see how it works. We actually instinctually do a lot of the Chinese stuff. What are some of the things you do when you have a cold, which are actually helping? What are some of these remedies you do? Apart from stupid stuff in the pharmacy that you're getting, which does nothing. Home remedies.
Hot soups.
Hot soup, okay, very good. What else? What kind of...
The hot rag.
Oh, hot rag, okay. You take rest, good. What kind of tea usually? What kind of tea is recommended? Lemon or ginger tea sometimes, right? Ginger is a heating herb. Actually, when you drink it, your body temperature rises, right? Anybody try hot peppers when you have a sore throat? It works wonders, right? You fry them, put a little salt, eat them with bread, a glass of milk nearby to survive the experience, right? It really destroys everything. Vodka in some countries, right? Get drunk for one night, it's all gone, right? Do you see how you're applying heat to your cold symptoms, thereby reestablishing the balance, right? Okay, we have a fever. What symptom is that? Yang or yin? What? Yang? Is that what you're saying? Yes, hot, right? Too hot. Now what do you do when you have fever? Cold shower. What else? The rag, yes. What else? Sleeping, rest, right? This is yin. And what else do they say when you have the flu you have to do? Drink a lot, water, right? Cooling. So you see how naturally in the home remedies, of course, now you go and you buy, what is this bottles called? Syrup that you buy in the Walgreens. What are these things you're buying when you have a cold? Give me the name. Huh? Yeah, Dayquil, NyQuil. It just basically, it does nothing. Right? But the real remedies, actually, you will see, as your grandmother in tune with nature was doing, right? These are natural remedies. Immediately you're applying the counter. And Chinese medicine is so sophisticated, actually diagnoses almost everything in terms of imbalance of yin and yang and applies. And so they've developed a huge herbology, right, where they have heating herbs, cooling herbs, and the way they do it is when you have a heating symptom, you have cooling herbs, and this is how they actually also, right, take care of the health of the body. So, so that's just, right. So of course the idea, right, is if you want to find happiness, to go back to the topic of happiness, if you want to find happiness, whether it's happiness of a society, of you personally, you have to learn to balance yin and yang energies in your life. So let's look a little bit, what would that look like? How many of you, let's take a poll. How many of you think your life is too yang? Raise your hand. Then you can explain. Let's see. Okay, how many of you think your life is too yin? 1, 2, and is that a hand? Okay. Nobody has a too yang life? Mine's too yin too. Okay, why do you say? Great, okay. When I was teaching this to the high schoolers, their lives were too yang. But yours too yin. Okay, Abdu, tell me, why is your life too yin?
I say more so for like the integral aspect. I find myself getting like very stuck inside my own head all of the time, and I spend a lot of time there. So like, I guess to counteract that, I try to be more expressive.
Exactly, right? If you're too much in your head, right? First of all, that could be too yang, right? Too many thoughts. So resting your head, right? Actually, but you're right, too internal, so that's too yin. So learning to move out of yourself and see other things would help. Very good. You see, you're doing your own prescriptions now. Let's go over everybody. Go ahead.
Always myself also, always overthinking everything.
That's too yang again, right?
Thinking the worst about everything.
The worst, yes, of course. Yeah. It's my specialty too. Right?
Not something.
So again, right, two yangs also need some rest so you can have some balance and not be completely overwhelmed. Let's go all around the classroom. Go ahead, you're next.
I would say yin also, because I'm also in the head a lot.
Wow, you guys need this class. I'm seeing that. Great. And COVID also made us too yin. Right? We were stuck at home. We lost all our friends. Right? We're here, but everybody's in their bubble, right? It's a very yin class, right? In fact, we're going to get rid of these computers. Just prepare mentally because it's going to happen. This is like creating more obstacles than already exist with the mask and the distance. Rachel.
Yeah, it's pretty much what I was going to say. Like, definitely very internal, but also with COVID, it's like now it's like, you know, now we're in person, but before it was like I'm not even leaving my house sometimes for like, you know, days. So
Exactly.
it's like totally
We've become capable of that. Before it was unheard of. Next. I forgot everybody's name, so you're next in the front. Lanera.
I guess, honestly, I would say I'm pretty balanced at this
Okay.
point in my life. I definitely, for the first like 22 years of my life, I grew up with like a lot of anxiety. I mean, ever since like 9/11, that was the first time I remember having anxiety. It's just like,
Okay, so a lot of yang, right? Activity,
Yeah, and-
emotional yang.
and I think as I've grown older, I've come to like realize that there's a balance. Even like, before this class, there's a balance in all things. Like there's times to be happy, times to be sad. But I definitely think I'm pretty balanced about it.
Okay, excellent. Very good.
Can I add something first?
Yes.
When you say that they think a lot or there's a lot going on internal, you correct it to yang when they say yin? Is
Yeah.
it yin or is
So
it
it's
yang?
both in a way, because the high thinking, high activity, that's yang, but it keeps them inside of themselves.
Which is
So
yang.
that's yin,
Oh, I
right?
see.
So
Okay.
they can just do two things: calm the mind, so react, right? You always want to apply the opposite, and then in terms of their internal, kind of being in the cocoon, go out more, right?
Okay.
So where are you at?
I would say for me personally, I would say yang, just because I feed off of like external energy, and that's sort of like where I don't know my energy comes from. Like I like to interact with people.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
So yeah, so you feed off of external energy, so you don't have it. So you're very yin and you need that,
Yeah.
right? Very nice. So you already see instinctively we know the remedies, right, that we need when we fall out of balance, right? You're next.
I think I'm tuning into.
This is a class of yin people.
I think I'm a lot on the
Okay, exactly. I mean, I think COVID really messed us up. I mean, I'm seeing the result right now. This is traumatizing for me, right? Excellent, right? And we'll talk about you another time, the Zoom people. Okay, but just to give you an idea of how this works, and of course we'll talk more about it as we get in the text. So the second thing, which is really interesting, I have a feeling I'll go over. Can I go over 5 minutes? Is that okay? Okay, thanks. Because already we started so late. Okay, acting without acting, Wu Wei. This has fascinated me for years. I have tried to figure out what this is. I mean, I was so fascinated by it. I asked, my dad went to China, and I'm like, when you go there, get me one of those calligraphies written Wu Wei on it, because I want to look at it. Maybe I will absorb it, right? So he got me that. This is a roll, came back with a scroll, and it's hanging in one of my rooms, and I look at it, and it feels so good to look at it. And I've always been obsessed by this action without action, probably because I was lacking, right? So you're attracted to what you lack, right? So finally, I figured it out, so I can finally share with you. This is a way of acting. So it's not doing nothing. Acting without acting is acting in a way that you are responding rather than initiating the action. Let me say it again. Acting without acting is acting in a way that you are responding to your environment rather than imposing an agenda upon it, right? You're responding to your environment rather than imposing an agenda upon it. So it's acting without acting because you're not actively going into the world and fixing things, right? You're responding. So you're just sitting here, boom, the need arises, and now you respond effortlessly because it's needed. I'll give you an example. Let's find a good example. Yes, here's a good, education is really nice place to begin to talk about the Tao Te Ching, right? So you have a kid, super rebellious, you know, going out with tattoos, just things you hate, right? Made another piercing on their forehead, I don't know, you know, so, and you're like completely embarrassed by this kid, and you know, you're smelling drugs in the house, and you're like, I need to intervene, right? Right? As a parent, what's your reaction? Well, let's hear. Let's hear how many young Indian people, let's see how many of you are able to do acting without acting. So what would be your reaction?
Well, my perception on it is that when I become a parent, it's not that I want them to do what I want. I want them, because definitely kids are, you know, they're meant to make their own mistakes. Like you can tell them, you know, don't drive too fast, you know, don't do drugs, but they're gonna do it anyway. So it's, I guess it would be my job to like guide them, but also to allow them to make their own mistakes.
Okay, so you
As
just
long as
allow,
they're
no
not-
doing.
Yeah, I mean,
Pure non-doing.
but there's like a balance to it. So like if you see them going too far, then you step in.
Ah,
But
okay.
if it's something harmless and maybe it's just like a rite of passage or just trials and tribulations of being a kid.
So they've gone too far. They've gone too far. Now what happens?
Oh, you give me a scenario.
So you step in, right?
Well, you have to give me a hypothetical because it depends.
Oh.
Like some things I wouldn't.
Okay. So let's say, give me a horrible thing that your kids could do that you would be like, that just crossed the line.
Rob somebody.
Okay, they rob somebody. That's great. They rob somebody. Now you're decided you're going to step in.
Well, how would I be able to stop that?
Huh?
Well, how would I be able to stop that?
Right. So that you're asking the question. So
If I guess if my kid was to that point, there wouldn't be anything I can do because
exactly.
everything leading up to that would be.
Okay, so you're thinking very Chinese, right? Yeah. Very good. Most of us would be like, we need to do an intervention, right? You know this term. Some families have the specialty of the intervention. Does the intervention work? No, right? Anytime you come in and you do an intervention, it's going to have the Tao Te Ching knows this, right? You cannot go and do an intervention. What is the only thing you can do when someone going downhill like this? Yes. Explain. How would that manifest in an action? Give us a scenario.
I mean, I'll give you my own personal experience.
Okay.
So I myself was like caught with something pretty bad. I won't go into like explicit detail, but I was in that situation where I was personally in like intervention with my parents, and I remember just thinking like, I don't want to be here. Like everything went in one ear out the other, and in that moment, I was like, rather than them being mad and like upset, I really wish they would have tried to at least experience or like put themselves in my shoes to understand why I did what I did, as opposed to just being mad off the bat. And I never got that chance. Okay. So I, of course, then lashed out on them because it's like, all right, well, if you guys are going to listen to me, then I'm not going to listen to you. So I feel as though, like, in that situation, compassion would be the best thing. Like, allow yourself to put yourself in that situation, and how would you deal with that?
Okay, excellent, right? So instead of intervening, the idea is, how can I best respond to the situation? Instead of thinking, here's what needs to happen, right? And you have this thing in your head, like, that kid needs to do this and this and this, and you know everything, right? And now you're going to intervene. You think, how can I? So you're thinking, you want to act, but you're acting strategically. What is the best way for me to respond to him right now at this moment? And at that moment, the Tao Te Ching says, your action will be pure, perfect, and flawless, right? And it will be, that's the key, effortless. That's why it's called action without action, right? In the sense of effortless. Lanira, go ahead.
I was going to add on to what he's saying. Like, I guess another point of the intervention, why I don't think it really works, is because it puts all the onus on the person that was seen as doing wrong, as opposed to the parents that may have ignored everything else beforehand.
Yeah.
And so they may have done something wrong too. So
excellent.
It's just like it's like an added burden on the person that's going through something, because nobody lashes out for no reason.
Right. Absolutely.
There are things
right?
that lead up to that are ignored by people.
Exactly. So really sensing where, like you're saying, compassion. It takes sensitivity to sense where are they, how did they get there, what do they need, and after being, this is receptive, right? Yin. Now I act yang. In Chinese philosophy, the yang has to be based on the yin. If you start with the yang, it's over, right? You always have to take a yin moment, receive, and then you act. That's Wu Wei. I first receive, I sense, I perceive, I I kind of have antennas to see what needs to be done, and then I act yang. Okay, you see how it's a perfect action because it's perfect harmony between yin and yang, right? So this is for me, that was a really huge breakthrough, because I tend to be very yang. Like if there's something that, if you're doing badly, I know exactly what you need to do. This is why I love teaching, because I can be that, you know. I can just be bossy fully 100%, right? But still, even teaching, you have to be attentive to what are the students' needs and how can I respond to their needs in the teaching. So even there, right, I had to first listen and be like, where are the students? What are they struggling with? What text can I bring to perhaps help? And then that's how you can actually respond, right? So everything, right, in a way, start with a yin. What is needed? What do they need to hear? Not what do I want to say, right? Let me say it again. What do they need to hear? Not what do I want to say, right? And very often, right, when we see someone in trouble, we have something we have to tell them. It's on our chest. It's bursting. Instead of thinking, what do they really need right now, right? And which takes strong yin, right? Okay, great. Last one, of course, which we won't talk about it, we'll do it, is silence, right? And this is, again, silence, especially we see now in this classroom, right? We have way too much activity in the mind in this classroom, and this is an imbalance, right? This is an imbalance where, in fact, creating unhappiness. And then as, my God, I forgot everybody's name. What's your name? What? Azerad. Right, as Azerad is saying, the thoughts then snowball and take more and more possession of your life, and now you can't even make a clear decision because you have like thousands of voices. I call it the chorus. I have a chorus singing in different polyphonic chorale, right? So we have all these voices, we have confusion, we have all kinds of, also emotionally, we're all messed up. We have so many emotions welling up, out of control. And so we need to yin things up, right? And so one of the ways, of course, we'll do this is through Qigong and meditation. I have a great example, recent example. My mom was visiting me, and she came to me angry from some situation where she was, and she was just a mess. I hope she doesn't listen to this video, but she was a really complete mess. And I was like, okay, let's do some Qigong. You know? So I led her in the 8 treasures, right? And she, you know, she got into it. She really focused and everything. At the end, she was like, oh my goodness, I feel so much better. Like all my emotions have calmed down, right? My thoughts have calmed down. And once you calm down, this is when the right action appears, right? This is really the key to wisdom, this book, right? Once you learn, you cannot do the right action from a place of frenetic thinking, overthinking, or frenetic overfeeling. You have to first calm down, and out of this calm will emerge by itself the right action, right? So that's why we will be also practicing again, right? Like last time, the art of meditation, silence, and so forth. So let me say a few words now briefly about Qigong, just so we know a little bit what we're doing and why. I'll take about 3 minutes. Okay, Qigong, first of all, you saw like the movements. First purpose of Qigong is to balance the yin and the yang energies in you. So there's a lot of movements that are opposites. You bend forward, you bend backwards, right? You reach one hand up, one hand down. You saw this, right? You twist this way, you twist that way. So a lot of these actions actually working on the yang energies, yin energies in your body. And because you're doing both, right, you're creating balance actually. Physical balance in your body. And by the way, this is why Qigong is considered part of the medical arts of China. Because once you bring your body into balance, you cannot get sick, according to Chinese medicine, right? If you're in balance, there can be coronavirus sitting outside. You might get sick, not going to be a big deal, right? Because your body's in perfect balance, right? So these movements, which seem like nothing, which are in fact balancing yang. So when you're bending forward, it's yin, right? When you're bending backwards, it's yang. When you go up, it's yang. When you go down, it's yin. So these movements actually bringing your whole body and your energy into balance, creating health according to Chinese medicine, because Chinese medicine says your body in balance, sickness cannot do any damage. Can touch you, you can, and you know this. I mean, how many of you had this where you're outside, you're fine, right? You go outside, you get cold, right? Your body now is cold. You go home, how you feel? You start to get sick, right? from all of a sudden your body coming out of balance, feeling too cold, right? Or I have that with, you had asthma attack, but I had allergies. My allergies can become so much that all of a sudden I will get sick, right? It turns into a sickness, right? Because similar to you. So many times when our body gets out of balance, or you go in the heat, you have a heat stroke, boom, it becomes, you're vulnerable, right? So anytime we are out of balance in our bodies, we are more vulnerable to disease. This is actually really a well-known fact in Chinese medicine. So Qigong actually is a medical practice where you're uniting. So this is the balancing of opposites, right, in Qigong. Second thing, action without action in Qigong. So this is interesting. So let me explain that. You cannot be a responder if you're not able to be receptive and to sense your environment, right? You cannot respond properly to your environment if you're not in tune with your environment. To be responding to your environment, you have to be open. You have to be flexible, right? Let me give you an example. You come to school and you tell, let's imagine you're trying to date someone. And now you have a plan, right? You have a plan, you're going to meet her in the class, and then you're going to try and ask her, right, to go for coffee. That's your plan. You woke up in the morning with your plan. You arrive in the class, she's there, but then she's in a hurry because she has the next class. You can't get a word in. Now, if you're stupid, what are you going to do? If you're not doing action without action, if you're doing action, you had your plan. What are you going to do? She's running to class and you're there. You chase her and be like, hey, would you like to get coffee tonight? And that girl is going to be like, yo, I'm busy right now. Don't talk to me. Is she going to reject you? And it's going to be the end of a beautiful love affair, right? Whereas if you were more flexible, meaning, okay, she's in a hurry. Let me save it for later. Let me wait for the right moment. I mean, for love, this is great advice, this stuff, right? Because love is all about responding. And you're like, okay, maybe I can catch her in the library. Now you go to the library and there she is. And now's the right moment. Now you can finally do your action in the right context. You are responding, right? To respond, you have to be flexible, capable, not rigid with, I'm going to do this. You have to be, Qigong makes your body flexible. And as it's making your body flexible, it's making your personality flexible. So that you're able, when life is flowing, right, when you enter the flow of life, to not be stuck in your rigid agenda, but to actually, okay, that's not the right moment. Let me wait until the right moment. You're able to bend. That's flexibility. If you cannot do the right action, if you're not capable of bending and going with what is needed at that moment and not imposing your agenda. So Qigong actually gonna bend your body, make your body flexible so that your mind and your personality are also going to be more flexible and you will be able actually to do more of the right action. And then finally, of course, silence. This is already Qigong, already a meditation, right? Much like yoga, Qigong should be practiced in total silence. It is a way to calm the mind, obviously. Actually, you don't even need to meditate after Qigong. That's the meditation, right? Okay, now, let me stop the recording.